Hi everyone, I am Dan Kenneth Esquadro, and today I will discuss the operational provision in CMO or Customs Memorandum Order number 22 series of 2010, or also known as the Revised Customs Port Operations Manual. Operational Provisions Section 13. Statutory provisions on entrance and clearance. The provisions of Section 1001-1025 of the Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines as amended on entrance and clearance of vessels are deemed incorporated in this manual. Section 14. The Pre-Arrival. Notice of Arrival or NOA with Estimated Time of Arrival or ETA. The shipping agent or representative of a vessel engaged in foreign trade entering any of the Philippine ports of entry shall notify the Piers and Inspection Division, Base Service Section or its equivalent office of the vessel's arrival and other particular at least 24 hours in advance. B. Upon receipt of the notice of arrival, the Customs Inspector or E2M OIC of the Piers and Inspection Division, Base Service Section shall perform the following functions. First is to electronically verify the vessel registry number or principal and other vessel information through Client Profile Registration System or EPRS. Second is input the estimated time of arrival in the E2M custom system. Third is to encode the time and date in system and affix his signature on the hard copy of the notice of arrival. Fourth is to furnish the customs boarding team a copy of the processed notice of arrival. B. Assignment of customs boarding team. The customs boarding team shall be assigned Base Service Section or its equivalent office through a duly signed assignment order. The following customs personnel shall be the members of the customs boarding team. First is Customs Senior Boarding Officer. Second is Customs Inspector. Third is the Customs Guards. C. Submission of advance electronic manifest before arrival of vessels engaged in foreign trade through E2M, customs and customs system and penalties. The submission of electronic copy of inward foreign manifest or and electronic copy of consolidated cargo manifest must be done through any of the value-added service providers accredited by the BOC. In the case of shipping lines, electronically submitted at least 12 hours before arrival of the carrying vessel. The ECCM in case of non-vessel operating common carrier, cargo consolidator, co-leader, break bulk agent must be submitted at least 6 hours before arrival of the carrying vessel. Registration of e-manifest. The system automatically registers a manifest in the customs system if the manifest meets the submission deadline. However, if the deadline is missed, the concerned shipping line or agent should submit a formal request letter to the office of the Deputy Collector for Operations to allow BOC-initiated manual registration of the manifest in E2M. Section 15. The Arrival. A. Documents or permits. First is quarantine certificate for incoming vessels from a foreign port. Entry of vessels from any port or place outside of the Philippines shall not be permitted until they have obtained a quarantine certificate issued under the authority of the Bureau of Quarantine. Second is entrance of vessel from a foreign port. Upon arrival of a vessel from a foreign port, form number of oath of entering vessel from a foreign port with customs documentary stamp duly accomplished by the master in 4 copies shall be presented to the office of the customs clearance officer within 24 hours. Third is documents to be produced by masters upon entry of vessel. The following documents properly accomplished shall be submitted by the master to the customs senior boarding officer. A quarantine certificate or pratik. B is clearance of vessel from last port of call. C is original 4 copies of inward foreign manifest duly signed by the master. D is 3 copies each of the following. First is crew list, passengers list for aliens or as required by immigration law in force in the Philippines. Fourth is copy of original duplicate of bills of lading. Fifth is bondage store list. Sixth is narcotics and dangerous drugs list. Seventh is ship store list, mail list, firearms and ammunition list, crew declaration list, parcel list, shipping articles and register of the vessel of Philippine registry. E is through cargo manifest, if any, which shall be deposited to the customs inspector and shall be returned to the master prior to departure to the other ports. F is cargo stowage plan or hatch list. If passengers vessel, 3 of copies of disembarking passenger list and their baggage declaration. Fourth is inward foreign manifest or IFM and consolidated cargo manifest or CCM contents the hard copy of inward foreign manifest required to be submitted by the master of the vessel to the boarding officer shall contain the following information. A. The bill of lading number, the marks and numbers of cartons, drums, boxes, crates and other forms of protective packaging for break bulk. C is container and seal number if containerized and initials if full container load and LCL if less container load. Number of packages, kind of packages, cartons, boxes, crates, drums, etc. Contents of description of cargo, the shipper, the consignee, gross weight in metric tons and the measurement in cubic meters, the port of origin and the notified party. Permits for discharge and lading of cargo unless the vessel has put into distress. The customs boarding officer shall, upon placing the vessel under customs surveillance and control, issue a general permit. Such permit, however, shall not constitute an authority for the loading of export cargo or delivery of import at shipside without the required entries or permits as this case may be. Endorsement of permits. The following permits shall be endorsed on the reverse side thereof: the general permit, the shipside permit, permits for the sending of special consignments of cargo to the piers or to the parcel sections, permits issued by the deputy collector for operation or its equivalent office for the transfer of came from one vessel to another. Shipside permit when duly processed and approved by the collector of customs or the deputy collector for operators or its equivalent office as the case may be, is an authority for the customs inspector assigned on a vessel to allow the discharge of cargoes specified on the permit at shipside onto lighters underguarded. Shipside permits. Regular shipside permit is issued by the deputy collector for operations or its equivalent office as now entry acquired for all cargoes which belong to the categories of regular shipside cargoes under existing regulations. B. Special shipside permit when cargoes do not belong to regular shipside cargoes, such as ballast, garbage, provisions, watering, bunkering vessels. For repair to ship's agent has to get the authority from the collector of customs prior to the processing and approval by the deputy collector for operations or its equivalent office. 2.2 The unloading of cargoes at dockside. Import cargoes. All cargoes discharged at dockside from a vessel shall not be accounted for by the customs inspector. However, a customs guard on each working hatch must see to it that the ship's checker is on board, making a tally of each sling, and if a sling goes down with the tally, the customs guard must stop the discharge from the hatch until such time that the checker does his job correctly. Passengers' baggage, parcel list, and crew personal effects. The customs inspector shall cause the immediate discharge of all baggage, parcel cargoes, and articles brought in by the ship's crew and passengers for discharge at the pier. The customs inspector shall remind the chief officer or the pursuer of the vessel if necessary that baggage and parcels must be discharged promptly and have the same transferred underguarded to the Office of Bay Service Section, PID, or its equivalent office. Receipt will be noted on the face of the transfer note, subject for examinations by customs examiners. No permit is required for the discharge and landing of baggage. If baggage and parcels are to be discharged into a carrier in the stream, the customs inspector shall assign a customs guard to underguard such baggage and parcels to the office of the Bay Service Section, or its equivalent office, where the receiving customs personnel in charge thereof will sign. For purposes of determining whether encargo or entrusted shipments of merchandise or articles from abroad be included in the parcel list, BC form numbers hereunder is the criteria. Any cargo which is found to exceed 350 pounds or 159 kilos in weight and 40 or 13 meters in measurement shall not be included in parcel list, and as such the customs inspector shall not allow the discharge unless the shipping agent concerned shall file a supplemental cargo manifest for said parcel or cargo within 24 hours after the arrival of the carrying vessel and pay the corresponding duties and taxes with either the informed entry division or formal entry division depending on the weight and measurement of the said cargo. The time and date of discharge to the Bay Service Section or its equivalent office of each parcel cargo shall be duly noted by the customs inspector on board under the last column of his copy of the parcel list. Under no circumstances shall any parcel cargo destined for other ports of entry be authorized for discharge at the pier without proper authority from the collector of customs. Section 16. Departure. Documents or permits. Documents required for exportation. In general, export declaration, commercial invoice, packing list, export permit for regulated cargoes. 1.2 Additional documents required. CBW shipments, transfer note, certificate of identification, and certificate of inspection and loading. PESA shipments, PESA transfer note, and PESA tally sheet. Transit cargo manifest, constructive, previous import, entry and intimal warehousing revenue declaration, remand immediate exportation and transshipment exportation permit. E. Special permit to letter request from shipping lines and load list of containers intended for loading. Second, inspector certificate of lading report. Customs inspector on board. The inspector's certificate of lading is accomplished by the customs inspector on board of a carrying vessel for all conventional export cargoes loaded into the vessel. The inspector's certificate of lading shall be accomplished in 5 copies and signed by the customs inspector on board vessel. Third, customs clearance of foreign vessel. For purposes of clearance of a vessel, the filing documents shall be presented to PID clearance section prior to the issuance of clearance. A BOC OPM form number 12, outward foreign manifest, 4 copies, 1 original copy, and 3 photocopies. BOC form number oath of master in manifest in clearance for a foreign port, 1 original copy with customs documentary stamp, 3 photocopies. Form number 11, oath of majors to foreign vessel clearing without passengers, 1 original copy with customs documentary stamp and 3 photocopies. D. BOC OPM form number 2, or the clearance of vessel to a foreign port. First, 1 original copy, customs copy with customs documentary stamp and original copy. Master of the vessel's copy with original seal and signature of the collector, custom or his duly authorized representative. Clearance customs inspector assigned on board in 3 copies. First copy for clearance officer, second copy for the shipping agent, third copy for the customs inspector on board. BOC OPM form number 3, BC form number 88, statistic supplemental in 4 copies. Bureau of Quarantine clearance for outgoing vessels, plant quarantine clearance, post office clearance, request for customs clearance by shipping agency signed by the customs inspector concurring that the vessel in which he is assigned is ready to sail for foreign port. The register and shipping articles if the vessel is of Philippine registry. The consular certificate of entry if the vessel is of foreign registry when required. B. Staffing and loading of cargoes. Containerized instruction relative to staffing of containerized export cargoes. A. Upon the issuance of the authority to load, the export declarations permit duly processed at the export division or its equivalent office shall be forwarded to the customs container control division or its equivalent office by exporters or shippers or customs representative. The notice of staffing shall be submitted at least 24 hours in advance, indicating the kind and quantity to be staffed, the container number to which cargoes shall be staffed, the time staffing will start, the address where staffing will be done, and the name of the exporter shipper. The assigned staffing inspector shall not allow staffing of export cargoes into the container van unless the duly processed export declarations permits cargoes to be staffed shall have been presented with the authority to load stamped thereon. The assigned staffing inspector shall supervise the actual staffing, which shall be conducted in the presence of representatives from all parties concerned. Upon completion of the conduct of staffing, the assigned staffing inspector shall affix his signature on the staffing report or sequence attesting the fact that the cargoes were indeed stuffed into the container. F. Duties and responsibilities of the staffing inspector. First is the staffing inspector shall supervise the actual staffing at the place where it shall be conducted. Second, he shall see to it that only those export cargoes with duly processed export declaration or permits with the authority to load shall be allowed to be stuffed into the container van. Third is, he shall ascertain the accompanying supporting documents or attachments to export declaration permits are complete and correspond to what has been declared therein. Fourth is, he shall make sure that any discrepancy in the export declarations permit as against the export cargoes to be stuffed is rectified accordingly. Fifth is, upon completion of the stuffing, he shall ascertain that the doors of container van are closed, locked, and properly sealed. Sixth is, in case of stuffing at COICFS outside customs zone, he shall issue a transfer note with details. Upon departure of the vessel to which the container van was loaded, he shall accomplish the inspector's certificate of lading or ICL. Eight, as to warehousing export shipment, he shall certify and sign the certificate of inspection and shall perform such other duties that be assigned to him from time to time by his superiors. Inspector certificate of lading of report of the staffing inspector. Duty requirements and overtime work conditions. 1.2. Stuffing of containers in customs bonded warehouses. When export cargoes are to be stuffed in containers at shipper's customs bonded warehouse, the stuffing shall be supervised by the warehouseman. 1.3. Loading of bulk and break bulk export cargoes at shipside. Loading of export cargoes shall be effected only upon presentation to the customs inspector on board a duly approved loading permit. The customs inspector on board must see to it that the name of the carrying vessel stated in the loading permit is correct. All cargoes at shipside shall have appropriate permits for such loading. The customs inspector shall take note of the names of lighters where the export cargoes are loaded, specifying the marks and numbers, and must see to it that what was loaded conformed to the number of packages appearing on the export entry. Loading of bulk cargoes at shipside shall be subject to weighing. The importer concerned shall make a request for the assignment of customs guard to check the actual weighing of such bulk cargoes in their respective warehouses prior to loading on barges. Loading of containers, whether loaded or empty at shipside from lighters, should not be allowed because of the difficulty of checking the numbers and contents of loaded containers. Should verification be required. All containers, whether loaded or not, be loaded from the pier. 1.4. Instructions relative to loading of containerized export cargoes. The loading inspector assigned to the carrying vessel shall verify and ascertain that the export declarations permit with containers number indicated therein have been duly processed at the Customs Container Control Division or its equivalent office, duly signed by the Chief Customs Container Control Division or his duly authorized representative. The loading inspector shall not allow the loading of containerized export cargoes into his assigned vessel without the corresponding duly processed export declarations permits with the authority to load stamped thereon. The loading inspector shall make sure that the containers to be loaded are indeed intended to his assigned vessels and for that particular voyage of the vessel. 2.3 Loading of passengers' baggage or crew personal effects. The customs inspector on board shall not examine incoming passengers' baggage. However, if no examiner is on hand during nighttime, Sundays, and holidays, the customs inspector on board may inspect and pass the hand-carried personal effects of incoming passengers, retaining on-board articles, goods, and effects subject to duty and or tax which should be sent to the office of the bay service or its equivalent office. Transfer notes and underguarded. The customs inspector shall also render transfer notes on the face of the original of which the receiving customs personnel in charge at the office of the bay service section or its equivalent office shall indicate his receipt. Section 17. Customs transit. Customs transit means the customs procedure under which goods are transported under customs control from one customs office to another. So, there are 4 kinds of customs transit operation. First is from port of entry to another port of entry as exit point for outright exportation. B. From port of entry to another port of entry or inland customs office or POM to PEZA or outside CYCFS of dock. Next is from an inland customs office to port of entry as exit point for outright exportation. Next is from one port of entry or inland customs office to another port of entry or inland customs office. Section 18. The Transshipment. Special instructions to customs inspectors relative to the discharge of transshipped cargo. Goods from a foreign port may be transshipped direct from the carrying vessel to another vessel engaged in the coastwise or foreign trade upon receipt of written permission from the collector of customs. Second is when a foreign transshipment permit authorizing the transfer of cargo from a foreign port is received by a customs inspector on board of a vessel of a foreign vessel. He shall permit the discharge of the consignment, causing it to be checked by marks and numbers. Next is bulk and break bulk cargoes for foreign transshipment shall either be discharged directly into the receiving vessel if it comes alongside or otherwise transshipped to it in lighters or discharged at the pier for eventual loading to the receiving vessel. Containerized cargoes for foreign transshipment shall be discharged at the pier for eventual loading to the receiving vessel under the same conditions stated in Section 15A. Instruction relative to foreign transshipment by Cccd. After having been duly processed at the Deputy Collector for Operations, the foreign transshipment permit in case of containerized cargoes with its supporting documents shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division or its equivalent office for posting of container numbers and their eventual loading. The loading inspector assigned to carrying vessel shall verify the correctness of container numbers indicated in the permit prior to loading of transit or transshipment cargoes on board the carrying vessel. Section 19. Transfer of imported cargo to outside. After having been duly processed at the office of the Deputy Collector for Operations, the permit to transfer to outside shall be coursed through the Customs Container Control Division or its equivalent office for posting of container numbers and their eventual transfer. That's all for the operational provisions, and thank you for watching.